to the Breakthrough Show. It's Shirley and Jessica. Yes, we love y'all.
Start your day the joyful way. It's your weekday morning talk show inviting you to start your day with a triple shot of good vibes. And now here's your host, the Queen of Joy herself, Jessica Dugas. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, and you are watching Project Joy Live. And I am attempting to find the joy in very little sleep last night. And then to top it off, my son had to work early this morning, so I had to run him over there, but his alarm didn't go off. And so there was all that. But this, it goes to speak to what we always talk about on this show with, and we really hammered it home yesterday with Sharon Walters on the show talking about gratitude and that life is full of the ups and downs, the ebb and the flow. And, life doesn't just come to us every morning and says, here's your joy, now go. That's not how that works. And so I shared with Sharon on the show yesterday that it has been a little bit of a challenge to be called the queen of anything for me, because then I feel like I need to live up to it, like I'm not already there. And so in referring to myself as the queen of joy, even though I know that life doesn't work like that, there's still a little bit of that subconscious pressure to like, get it together, Jessica. And, for me, it has become a challenge that I wake up and I'm ready to tackle, and saying, okay, so I got maybe 4 hours of sleep last night, and maybe my son has not woken up. And guys, remember before when I said it only takes 6 minutes to get to Target? I think it took me 5 this morning. So I'm working on it. It gives me an opportunity to practice what I preach, and to run in the door 5 minutes ago, slap my lip gloss on and say, here we go. So it's a challenge, but I'm here for it. And I think that, I am a glutton for punishment. It is what it is. Listen, guys, I'm so excited. We have Scott Mason back today. It is a bittersweet moment because, this is the last part of his series. I should have brought tissues. I did not, because you guys know we've been crying throughout this whole series. You guys have been passing tissues in the comments of every episode. But the good news is that Scott Mason will be back with us on My Way in just a couple of weeks. So really excited about that, or a few weeks. Next Tuesday, Grimlong is on. I have shared with you guys before. She is the person behind the scenes that helped me to learn how to build a website and learn how to do all the fun stuff that I do on there. And so she is my guest on My Way this next Tuesday. But then the next episode, Scott is back with us. So we're not going to miss him for much longer. And I know you guys have been amazing about sharing how much you've enjoyed Scott on the show. So I'm sure he'll be glad to hear all of that. What else is going on with Joy today? So here's the thing, tying into what I was talking about in the beginning. Obviously, yesterday in Texas, we had a huge tragedy happen with a shooting at an elementary school in Texas. And I was in the middle of listening to, of course, Johnny Depp Amber Heard case with Emily D. Baker yesterday when all of it started happening and the comments started going wild. Oh my God, do you see what's happening? And I want to start off by saying that in this kind of work that we do here of live streaming and having shows, it is a challenge for us. And I don't think those of us that live stream give ourselves enough credit. I'm just going to be honest about that. It is a challenge to stay on topic, to stay on point, especially when you're paying attention to comments and having comments rolling in and people going, oh my God, do you see what happened? And next thing you know, you're like, I don't even know where I am right now. And we want to acknowledge when tragedies such as the one that happened yesterday happen, but we also have a job to do, and we have something that we have to focus on for our show. And I don't think there's anything wrong with if it's the host's idea, if there's not something going on in that particular moment, to say, okay, let's take 5 minutes and process whatever it is that comes up. But it's also the host's choice what they need to do, and decide what their priority needs to be in the moment. And obviously, you know, when you look at a case such as the one that was happening and that's been happening in court between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and they've been focused on publicists and hashtags and, you know, settlements and difference between donation and pledge, and all of these different things, it seems so trivial compared to what happened with the shooting yesterday. But it's also an understanding that in choosing to focus on something in any given moment, it's not dishonoring whatever else is going on. I want to be really clear about that, because we have to choose our priority in the moment. Obviously, no matter how trivial the thing, you know, the situation, the judge couldn't just get up in the middle and be like, well, sorry, there's a tragedy going on in another state, we're not going to do the case today. You do your job and then redirect afterwards, you know. And so it reminded me of a couple times yesterday when I have been on this show in the morning, and here we are tasked with the job of being joyful and finding the joy. And then next thing you know, in the comments, oh my God, there's a bombing, there's a war, there's a this, that, or whatever in the moment. And it talk about being challenged in the moment to go, we're supposed to be finding joy here. Okay. Well, sometimes the joy in the moment is just recognizing, taking that moment and being like, yeah, something is going on here. But then knowing what your job is and doing that job, and knowing that it's not dishonoring anything or doing any harm to finish your job and come back and go back. Everybody has to do what works for them in any given moment. And so I had to give a huge shout out to Emily D. Baker yesterday for holding it together. I'm talking about 160,000 people in the comments of her live stream. 160,000 people, and she reined it in, she held it together. And so that's why she deserved the fact that she did. In fact, I mentioned this on Monday, she hit 500K on Monday. So super, super excited for her. And I was a proud fellow live streamer yesterday to watch that, because it can be such a challenge to hold it together when the world is falling apart, and whether the world meaning the whole world, the family, a city, a incident, whatever. So she did amazing. What else? Also, Carol had an amazing show yesterday for Money Matters. She had Karen on. It was an amazing show. You guys can catch the replay at thebreakthroughshow.com. Also, what else is happening today? Oh, I don't know if you guys know this. Let me know if you're celebrating anything today, by the way, but it is Geek Pride Day. If you consider yourself a geek or a nerd, take pride in that today. I still, after all these years, I'm not really sure what classifies a geek or a nerd. I mean, because you kind of see it change over time with whatever the trends are in the moment. Obviously, the geeks and nerds, when we were little, we didn't have like certain things that are today, certain types of games or social media or whatever. But, you know, the band geeks, I was definitely in that group of amazing people. This one time at band camp, that's all I'm going to say. And so if you're a geek or a nerd today, wave your flag because you're amazing. It's also Brown Bag It Day, a reminder of if you work outside the home, bring your lunch. It is less expensive. It can be more healthy unless you fill the bag with Doritos and Ho-Hos, which I don't recommend. But it is Brown Bag It Day. Bring your lunch to work. It is also Tap Dance Day. Tap Dance Day. I have PTSD from doing dance as a child, so I'm going to digress on that. But I do enjoy tap dancing. I loved a lot of the old dancers, Gene Kelly, from all the old musicals back in the day. And so love the tap dancing, and more power to you if you are a tap dancer. Jason's here this morning. Good morning, Jason. It is good to see you. Listen, make sure I see some of y'all watching there not saying good morning. Say good morning. Let us know where you're joining from. And of course, what is bringing you joy today. We are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to come back with the fabulous Scott Mason. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understand your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
Welcome back to Project Joy Live. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. Today is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. It has been raining here in Alabama. Let me know what's going on in the weather in your part of the world. I'm very excited, and it's also a bittersweet moment because this means that this is the final installment of our Magnetizing and Monetizing Your Professional Freedom with the fabulous Scott Mason. So without further ado, we don't want to waste any time. Let's welcome him back to the show. Welcome back, Mr. Mason.
Ms. Dugas, it is so good to see you. How are you?
I'm awake.
Good. I don't want you to be sleeping in the middle of your live stream. Come on, girl. We can do better than that.
I know it. I know we can't. But it filled me with energy to know that you were going to be on the show today. So I was like, wake up.
That's good, because you know what? The last thing I want people to associate me with is the B word, boredom.
Yes. You're
and
not
Jason,
that.
Hello. Good to see you, homeboy.
Yes. So listen, I was mentioning a little bit about the challenges of live streaming when the shit hits the fan in the world around us. How has that experience been for you? Have you run into that yet, where you've been live and then things just start happening and you have to address it?
Not so much in the exact moment, perhaps because what usually the time when I have a live stream show is at night. And so usually the news events of the day have finished. That being said, there have been times in which major events have gone on. For instance, the most recent one, not the shooting yesterday, but the invasion of Ukraine, when that officially happened. We did take a moment to acknowledge it. But like you said earlier, we have to be able to focus on what the purpose of the show is, unless the purpose of the show is completely obliterated by the event.
Right.
You know, there was, and I'm not making a political statement here. I want to be very clear about what I'm about to say, or an endorsement of anybody. But there was a presidential race a few cycles ago, which there were two candidates. And during that presidential race, the economy crashed. The entire economy crashed, literally in a day. And one of the candidates said, we need to suspend the presidential campaign so we can all come back and resolve this. Both of the candidates were in Congress. So Congress can go back and come up with some legislative solutions to this. The other candidate said, no, we have to be able to handle more things than one at a time. And so we will deal with the economic crash, but we also have to be able to manage our campaigns. That's what happens when you're president. And I think that that's an important thing for us to remember when we think about live stream shows. The world doesn't stop, as tragic as an event is and momentous as it might be, because of that event, unless literally it's the end of the world.
Right. I mean, like, I can totally see something, like if something happens and like the internet goes out, or, you know, obviously something like that would affect the stream, but we have a job to do, and it can be challenging, I think, to communicate that to an audience that is like, but no, this is what's going on, and they want us to you know, we're not like Emily said yesterday, she's like, I'm here to cover the case, I'm not a news person. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm not supposed to be reporting on this other stuff.
Well, and in the moment too, particularly in a catastrophe, not only is she not a news person, but she may not have the relevant expertise or the knowledge to be just talking. Now, live streaming, we all say stuff. Yeah. All of us have left trails of BS.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but
you and I only say things that are just roses. Yes,
exactly. But that being said, right, in a crisis, the last thing anyone wants to do is, real feelings are at stake. There are, you know, is to just needlessly seed the world with you know, with sour flowers.
I know it. Well, listen, we speaking of perfect things that we always say, this whole series has been perfection. If I do say so myself.
You bring it out of us. That's just
well, let's do a little recap. We've been talking about magnetizing and monetizing your professional freedom. And let's do a little recap for everybody of where we've been, and we'll go into building our own Mount Olympus today. It's happening.
It's going to be a powerful day. Yes. And I think that you're right. Summarizing the journey so far is of paramount importance. For anyone who is feeling stuck or stagnant in their career, their life, really where we started on day one of this 4-part journey has been looking at the myths that might be holding us back, particularly the toxic ones, and also understanding the roles that we play within those myths, then taking some steps to rewrite them. So that's been step number 1. Step number 2 has been visiting the inner oracle to uncover your inner strengths, who and what you are, connecting your purpose with your values, then injecting a healthy dose of realism to begin to create a vision for what your life could be like, ultimately finessing that into a personal mission, or at least an idea of a mission. From there, you're going to start to feel real passion about what happens next. So to prepare for your journey up into Mount Olympus and to begin to actualize that mission, it's important to develop the charisma within. You're going to start to feel passion, but how do you communicate it in a way that brings opportunity your way? That's what charisma is all about. And that leads us then to today, which is tying it all together, making all of this preparatory work mean something with a realistic, actionable roadmap to Mount Olympus. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about what happens when you finally are ready to step on that mountaintop.
I love it. I love it. Well, for those people who may not be of the mythological knowledge, as we are here on this show, tell everybody about Mount Olympus. What exactly are we talking about here?
Yes. Mount Olympus was the metaphorical home of the Greek gods. It was a mountain that people, even back in ancient Greece, could climb. They knew full well if you went to the top of it, it was just a bunch of rocks. So it really represented a state of mind. And of significance, it was not always the heavenly home. The Olympian gods, the Greek gods, had to earn the right to be there. They had to destroy their own toxic myths and then create something at the top. But once they were there, they became the glorious manifestations of the optimized state of humanity that were able to demand and command their worth of mortals. So they really, as deities themselves and as a place with a home, have metaphorical impact for those who were seeking what the Olympians represented, which is professional freedom.
I love that. I love that. And, you know, it's interesting as we talk about this, thinking of just the metaphor of going atop the mountain and that being like kind of in a rival space. I've often shared, I recorded a meditation a few years ago. I refer to it as my mountaintop meditation. And it takes the listener on a journey to the mountaintop and then giving us that kind of bird's eye view of whatever we're challenged with in the moment or whatever our life looks like in the moment, because we can get so caught up in our stuff in the moment that when we go to that mountaintop place and we encourage ourselves to look from this bird's eye view, then we have a different perspective of going, oh, this might not be as bad as I thought it was, or it's, you know, and it really is kind of an arrival moment where you're having these realizations of, oh, this is all that's happening. So it definitely, I feel like the mountaintop is so symbolic of kind of this arrival or new perspective on life.
You've actually raised an important point, and I want to thank you for saying those exact words as beautifully as you did, by the way. I'm going to talk briefly about a $10 word. But it's a $10 word that's worth remembering and takes us back to the very first discussion that we had. It is apotheosis. If you recall, in the first episode of this, which hopefully folks can and will replay, we talked about Achilles, who avoided the Trojan War because of a belief that he was a mortal, and upon his death as a mortal, would forget all of his memories and lose his identity. His mother had been a goddess, and she tried to protect him from that as well. That was a toxic myth because there was an actual system within Greek mythology within which if you became a hero, if you were willing to become the author of your own story and engage in that journey, when you died, you didn't lose your memories and your consciousness. You became essentially an immortal. There was a special dispensation in the afterlife for people who chose to become heroes. That special dispensation, the translation from being a regular mortal with a regular shade-like spirit into an immortal, is apotheosis. When you go through the process that we've been discussing this month, you are engaging in the journey of a hero. However, it's important to remember that a hero is a transitional state. You only are a hero for so long as you are on that journey. You don't just end up being a hero and that's it. You experience apotheosis and become an Olympian.
I love that. I love that description. So I figured what I would do is, I figured it must be super easy to build your roadmap. So I made one right here. I have me, and then there's the mountain, and we're done, right? That's it. That's all we have to do is take out a piece of paper and draw it.
Exactly. Why is this Scott Mason you're talking today? Get him out. After that? Yeah, sure. Okay, there's the door. Bye. Nice knowing you.
How do we get started, Scott Mason?
I'm going to start by telling you the story of a hero who ultimately achieved apotheosis. Although we're not going to really talk about his own apotheosis. We're going to talk about another apotheosis later. But we're going to talk about the national hero of the city-state of Athens. His name was Theseus. Now, Theseus emerged as a hero due to a very peculiar set of circumstances in very ancient Greece. There was on the island of Crete a monster that was rampaging. It was called the Minotaur. The Minotaur had the body of a man, but the head of a bull, with one key distinction: fangs. And the Minotaur only ate human flesh. Pretty scary. Now, rather than having the citizens of Crete just be eaten by this monster, what the king of Crete did was lock it away in a labyrinth underneath the palace. And by the way, if you ever go to Crete, that palace and that labyrinth are still there to visit to this day.
Wow.
Personally. So in any event, he didn't want to sacrifice other Cretans to the monster because he wouldn't be king very long if that happened. So he waged war against other city-states, including Athens. And when Athens lost, he demanded as tribute every 9 years, I think, 7 young men and 7 young women, and they would be dumped into this labyrinth and literally fed to the Minotaur. And no one could get out of the labyrinth because the designer of it was basically the smartest man who ever lived. The smartest man who ever lived's name was Daedalus. Theseus was a child of a single mother born in random Greece. There was a local legend that if you lifted up a local stone, there would be a sword and a pair of sandals underneath. And if you could lift that stone and grab that sword and sandal, then you could be the next king of Athens. And by the way, the Arthur legend and Disney movies like The Sword and the Stone are all based on this part of the Theseus story. Theseus was able to do this. And so he went to Athens in order to make a better life for himself. He quickly figured out that there was a particular need there and that there were job openings. There was a job opening, for instance, for a hero that could stop these human sacrifices to the Minotaur, and that there was a need. He also realized that due to his ability to have lifted the stone and gotten the sword and sandal, he could prove that he had the heroic chops to make a good case that he was the right person to fulfill this job. And so he persuaded the king of Athens to do this. So that goes as to the first 2 things you want to make sure that you do if you are building a roadmap to Mount Olympus. Number 1, make sure that you refine, I would say 1 to 5 business ideas that represent the actualization of your mission. And by the way, that you spend the time networking with people, because sometimes there are a lot of jobs or job descriptions that are out there that you might not be aware of, in order to uncover what those 1 to 5 Olympian career path ideas might be. Theseus found out about the hero job by going to Athens and talking to people and finding out about this sacrifice to the Minotaur. He wouldn't have known that if he hadn't done some networking. Number 2, he had to figure out who exactly he was serving and why he was, who he was serving and why exactly he was the perfect person to provide that service. And again, his strength of character and physical strength that had been demonstrated by lifting up the stone and claiming the sword and the sandal basically was what he used to make the case that he and he alone was uniquely suited to this new job role that was available of hero. And so what he did was and by the way, he volunteered to substitute himself for one of the male sacrificial victims. And so that showed that he had the character and a whole bunch of other qualities that were necessary, the courage and the boldness to be able to actually do this job of hero. So those are the first 2 steps that one would want to take if you want to begin to build out your roadmap. We could talk for a minute, if you like, about the actualization of that roadmap, but I felt it was important to at least understand that some background work does need to be done before just drawing a roadmap. Or a nice line on a notepad.
Yeah. Come on. I thought it was going to be that easy and we were done. Jason said, so well said. He loved what you were sharing.
Thank you, Jason.
Good morning, Jason. By the way, good to see you here. And Amanda's joining us. Good morning, Amanda. Always good to see you. So when I wrote down the 2 points. So number 1, refine 1 to 5 business ideas that represent your mission.
Yep.
And number 2, figure out who you are serving and why you are the one to serve. Now, I have to say about that number 2, we hear that often, you know, what's your niche? Who are you serving? And all of that. But I've rarely heard that second part. Why are you the one to serve? I haven't thought about that before.
Well, if we think about it, anytime we are making a change in our life paths and seeking to become someone of consequence, in other words, if we're looking to, like, professional freedom for you may look like working for a nonprofit when you've been in a corporate job for a long time, or it may be switching from HR to accounting, or it may be becoming an entrepreneur, or it may look like moving into an executive path. In any of those transitions, A, there's always someone that has done that before or is otherwise available to do it, and B, who wants to do it and is more than willing to make the case why they should be the person to do it. So whenever you're stepping into something new, it's imperative to explain why you and you alone are justified. Because if you're new, you don't necessarily have the clear, obvious backdrop for it. By the way, that is where we begin to really tie in the charisma that we talked about last time. People don't only respond to reason. Some people respond to reason and reason only, but they're very rare. Most people want to see the reason, the justification, very specifically tied to whatever it is, but they want passion too. Charisma brings that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're seeing how that all ties in. Everything that we've talked about the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks now, as ties in together, because that charisma is so important when it comes to that part of why you're the one to serve. And I think it also speaks to what we were talking about in that charisma segment, that everybody has their own sort of what charisma looks like.
Exactly.
And so then that to me speaks to when we're talking about when we have those moments pop up, and I know you love the phrase imposter syndrome.
You're turning me to stone. It's like I just looked at Medusa.
But we can get into this space where, like, say we're a coach, there's a ton of coaches, and even if we break it down and go, okay, well, now I'm going to be a money coach, there's a ton of money coaches, there's a ton of all these different things. So it can be easy for, we get excited, right, about what we're doing, and then we get into the space and we're like, oh, there's a lot of people like me. And it can be challenging for us to tap into that, why are we the one to serve? But then if we go back to what we talked about charisma, your charisma is not going to resonate with everybody. Their charisma is not going to resonate with everybody. And so that's where we find that one mountain that belongs to you.
That represents your own inner Orpheus, your own inner charisma coming out, because you expressed an understanding of it. You expressed it with passion. I was riveted listening to you, but you also expressed it in a way that was unique to you and what you stand for in this world, Jessica. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Amanda's very interested out here. She's also about to fall off the chair. She's laughing so hard. I love it. I love it. Yeah, hold yourself up, Amanda. We're not done yet. Okay, so we talked about the business ideas that represent your mission, and even talking about that mission part too. I want to circle that back around. Yeah. We talked about that mission and vision and all of that at the very beginning. If you guys have missed any segment before today's part 4, go back and listen to the other 3. I cannot. Amanda's been here every time, and she can tell you.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. It's good to see you.
And so she can tell you the importance of listening to all of that. But so we've got those 2 ideas. Now what do we need to do?
We'll go back to Theseus for a minute. He got on the ship with the other sacrificial victims and arrived at Crete. When he was at Crete, he suddenly realized this palace was huge. And not only was it huge, but it was guarded by a gigantic bronze robot named Talos. This robot, by the way, which the design for C3PO was based on, was as tall as the walls of the city and had gigantic boulders, and it literally just stomped around and threw these rocks at anyone that tried to leave, at least if they didn't have authorization. And so he quickly understood he needed to do something. Now, being the networker that he was, because he had gone through my program and learned how to do so earlier on, he chatted up everyone in the palace and quickly figured that he had 2 allies. One was the genius who had designed the labyrinth, Daedalus, who had not wanted his intelligence to be used this way. And number 2, Ariadne, the daughter of the king. Ariadne was an incredible planner. And she loved all the details. She loved looking at exactly when things should be done, how they should be done, coming up with the details, and then thinking through the dependencies. And for those who aren't familiar with business terms like dependencies, the dependencies are roadblocks that might come away in your path, or things that the path can't happen unless they are overcome. And so she loved to think through these sorts of things. And so he met with her in Daedalus. Daedalus made for him magic golden yarn that glowed in the dark. And then Ariadne told, after thinking it all through, Theseus exactly what to do. Now, that Minotaur slept at night and snored. And he snored really loud. Not only that, but he really was vulnerable. He slept on his back. So she told Theseus, go at midnight. The Minotaur will be asleep. He'll be snoring. He is so loud that you can just, because he sleeps on his back, you just decapitate him, stab him in his chest. And that snoring sound is how you'll find your way to him. Use this golden thread that Daedalus has given you to sort of make sure that your pathway there is marked, so you and the other sacrificial victims can just follow it back, sort of like Hansel and Gretel would have with the breadcrumbs. Mm-hmm. And so Daedalus did this. And she said, by the way, time it by XYZ time, and then we'll quietly sneak out the palace this way so that we can avoid that robot, which itself will be asleep, and then we will escape. And so what Theseus did was he literally executed this detailed plan step by step, and it worked. He killed that Minotaur. He and the other sacrificial victims got out, and then by the time the robot woke up, boom, 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 it started stomping away to the shoreline, and the ship of Theseus was too far away for it to throw any boulders at. Athens was saved. Theseus became its king. So
I'm just taking it in. I love the stories that you've been sharing, because it really, I think we can learn to apply these things more when we have these epic things to remember, Scott.
Absolutely. They provide us with the distance that we need to be able to process the meaning of what is underneath the myths and then apply them to ourselves. They're both epic and dramatic, but they're also general. Now, we're going to talk briefly before we leave, if we have time, about Odysseus, which is the final step and perhaps most important in this process. But that's the greatest epic story ever told. And it resonates, as has the story of Theseus and Orpheus and Achilles and all the others that we've covered, for the exact reason that you're talking about right now.
I love it. Amanda said she loves your story, Scott, and she appreciates you. And good morning, Anne Marie. It is good to see you here this morning. Thanks for joining us. Let us know if you guys have any questions about any of the things that we've been sharing this morning. And so how does that story you just told tie into the next part of what we need to know about what we need to do to build our own roadmap?
Mm-hmm. So what Theseus did was ultimately become he ended his heroic journey and found professional freedom. He wanted to be a hero, but ultimately it turned out that by the time he got back, the job opening of king was available. And he became king. And it's hard to imagine a job in which you have more professional freedom. It would be more fun, particularly if you are Theseus, than being king. Kingship is something that ties us into the final story, which is not only having walked through the roadmap to get you where you need to be, but also accepting the final identity shift that this all represents. In other words, it is making a declaration of your professional freedom. Just as the United States didn't just say quietly in the back of a room somewhere, we're a new country, and just sort of secretly organize a Congress and an election system. They made a declaration of independence. And so should you. That's what Odysseus is about. But that's an important step, because going through the roadmap, it's important, by the way, to have an accountability partner. Ariadne also served as that in that function for Theseus. If you have the accountability partner, they will help you walk through the steps and figure out the things that need to be shifted when the dependencies don't quite work out the way you wanted them to. But still, you ultimately have to be prepared for the end of that plan. A lot of times folks walk through the plan, but they're scared to take that final step and become an Olympian. They're afraid of apotheosis, rightfully so, because you're leaving the old you truly behind forever. The transitional journey of a hero is over, and you are becoming an Olympian. That's a tall order, but it is a tall order. I believe it is incumbent upon every last one of us to accept and embrace. Otherwise, Providence wouldn't have given us the gifts that we have.
I love that. And the other thing that I love about these stories is that, you know, he had obviously, you said the job that he was supposed to do wasn't open, so then he went to become a king. And you can see in these stories and these myths and these tales that every single job, so to speak, had a high purpose. It was all like, this is for a reason. And I think sometimes it can be challenging for us in our lives to understand the value of what we might be seeing in our head as a lower position or something of that nature. And so I love when we talk about these stories because it kind of equalizes everything. Like, obviously you have a hierarchy, but you see the importance of every position.
In part two, I believe we talked about this with regard to the story of Hercules, how the labors that he went through as part of his heroic journey first started out as localized things that were benefiting the people in the area of Greece where he lived, basically. Then later, he began to conquer monsters that were terrorizing or represented threats to the entire world. Finally, he started, as his last three labors, I believe, conquering monsters that represented death itself. So he was moving from the local, just this is convenient for me and the people in my immediate tribe, to labors that were representing service to the entire world, and then later to humanity's status as humanity itself, that were existential in their nature. Theseus, you're right. He wasn't just seeking glory. Glory was the byproduct. He was seeking to serve the people of Athens. Can you imagine when he walked into Athens, what it was like talking to the fathers and mothers there, or the other young people of his age that were losing their brothers and sisters and their best friends and their children, to be eaten by a half-bull, half-man monster in another country that had already defeated them in war? The psychological devastation of the people in Athens is important to keep in mind. Theseus was taking on a profound act of service, ending suffering, helping people to find a different way than what they had become acclimated to, which was awful. It's powerful and important stuff, and it's ultimately why he was so committed to driving through and completing his plan. And by the way, as I mentioned, with Daedalus and Ariadne, why he was able to recruit those that were in Crete itself to be able to help him, because they were moved by his mission too. They were horrified by human sacrifice to a monster.
Wow. I mean, it really, I think everybody's been chiming in. I love it. And Amanda was sharing that he was meant for greatness. So how do you feel about that?
Interesting that she says the word but. Yes, but he was meant for greatness. I want to change that wording there. Yes, and he was meant for greatness. He was born in random, obscure, Nowheresville, Greece. I think the name of the city was Trozen or something like that. Like, no one's heard of it. And his mother was just a woman who had had an affair. Allegedly, it was with a king, but no one really believed her. So he was nobody. He was nobody. All of us, every last one of us, that includes you, that includes me, have greatness within us. We are all destined for a purpose. We're each given gifts. Now, those gifts may not look the same, and we may or we may not play roles that appear great in any particular time, but that doesn't mean they're not. There's no such thing as a small role if what you're doing is connected to a larger purpose. Ariadne was just playing a secondary role in this story. But that doesn't mean we ain't talking about her thousands of years later. I also want to add something personal here. I was the child of an illicit love affair and put up for adoption and raised in Nowheresville, Kansas, just like Theseus. My debate coach decided to tell the whole class about me. And I want you to be mindful when I tell you what I'm about to say, that I am half black. He said to the class about Scott Mason, you can teach a monkey to speak, but you can't teach him how to think. That does not lead me to believe that he thought I was destined for greatness. People in my circumstance, my mother worked for a dog food factory. People don't look at the child of a dog food factory worker and say, he's destined for greatness. We have to be the author of our story. And that goes back to episode 1 here. And so I'm so glad she raised this. The 3 positive roles that it is imperative that each of us embrace is not just the hero and the Olympian, but the author of our own story. When Achilles said, I'm going to go to the Trojan War, he was changing the trajectory of his life. He was putting himself in the position where he could write himself into the role of a hero. We all can do that. Achilles had been dressed as a princess living in a remote island up until that point. Who would have thought that he was destined for greatness? He was only destined for greatness because he decided to be the author of his own life. So why push back on that? It's not a but, it's an and. Jessica, and you are destined for greatness, as are the 2 Jasons on this program, Anne Marie, Ugly Pretty. Everybody is destined for our own greatness if we choose to become the authors. And I say that as someone who's been repeatedly told throughout my life, I'm destined for nothing. That's just one story, but I could go on for a long time about that.
I absolutely, but I've heard that story and several others from your childhood. And I believe you absolutely took greatness and said, watch what happens.
Exactly.
And Amanda, by the way, when you were telling this story, I think she was taking her earrings off out in the audience. She's like, who tell me where to go, Scott.
Take those earrings and throw them right here to New York City. All right? Boom.
We get feisty when Scott's on the show, let me tell you. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to wrap it up for everybody. Does that sound good, Scott?
It sounds awesome.
All right. We're going to take a break. We're going to visit our friends at White Scholarship Foundation, and also we're going to listen to the For Love poem in Lingala this morning. We'll be right back after this.
Imagine a world where every child gets a great education. Educating all children is the only way to end poverty. This is what the White Scholarship Foundation is working to accomplish. Our 6 staff members, our mentors and coordinators, who are on the ground in Kenya, are totally engaged in every aspect of our students' lives, so we can give them every opportunity for success. In just a few short years, we have already awarded 141 scholarships. We send children to high school who would have never gone without our support. And then we help them go on to either university or vocational school. We have already scaled our holistic business model to 4 locations and are ready to scale it to many more. Today it's Kenya, but tomorrow it's more countries. Please contribute what you can today. You can make a one-time donation, a recurring donation, or choose to sponsor a child all on your own for all 4 years of high school for just $3,500. Go to our website, www.whitescholarshipfoundation.org.
Naponi Bolingo, je choisis l'amour. Donc, ata motema mozito, ata molimo ezoki, naponi bolingo. Po mokili yanse epanzana kakate, po na ekolo mokie wangai, epai na bomba nzoto, epai nga nazali nde malamu, kasi po na mokili mobimba, po na mokili nyonso, naponi bolingo. Po ebatela mbeba, etikala ata kobakisa bakufi te. Ata bibambola ya bakufa te, naponi bolingo. Po na bana na biso bazala malamu. Po na kobatela baninga na biso. Po na nzela polele ya bandelo ya bikolo na biso, naponi bolingo. ata motema ezali bozito, ata molimo ezoki naponi bolingo.
Welcome back to Project Joy Live. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and we are here with the fabulous Scott Mason this morning. It's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet moment to wrap up our series, but I would love for you to wrap it up for everybody in just a moment here. Also, Anne-Marie and Amanda, thank you for standing for love with us this morning. And Amanda says she's in Brooklyn. So
you're a home girl. I used to own a little factory right on the corner of Williamsburg and Bed-Stuy. If that was near you, hey. And I'd love to hear whereabouts in Brooklyn you are. Not your exact address, of course, but let's see how much of a home girl you really are, okay?
I can't today. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to see you guys when I get up north. I'll tell you what. We're gonna throw down. It's gonna be a whole thing. All right, let's wrap this series up for everybody. Let's wrap up today and wrap up the series, Scott.
I'm about to share a story that is of tremendous power. So take a second before I get to the end. Think it through. You're allowed to have emotional reactions, but I think it will mean something. The most influential story ever written is that of Odysseus. The poet Homer wrote it in a story called The Odyssey. A lot of people probably studied it in high school, or if they went to college, they studied it in college. And it tells the story of Odysseus, the king of a city-state by the name of Ithaca. Odysseus became famous during the Trojan War. He had resisted going to the Trojan War, by the way, by pretending to be insane, but that was exposed as a lie. In other words, he was acting out a toxic myth, the myth of the fool, to avoid becoming the author of his own fate, which is a leader on this legendary expedition. And when he was on that expedition, he actually created the Trojan horse, a gigantic wooden horse that was filled with Greek soldiers that the Trojans thought was a peace offering. So they brought it inside of Troy, and they celebrated their victory over the Greeks all around the Trojan horse. And once they'd fallen asleep, the Trojan horse opened up, and outside came all of these Greek soldiers that were armed to the teeth, and they literally slaughtered all of the men and babies except 3 within Troy, and sold every single female into slavery for life. So Odysseus's great idea was that of the Trojan horse, and because of him, the Trojan War was won by the Greeks. That being said, sometimes we regress. It was a long journey home, and along the way, Odysseus bought into some other toxic myths about himself. He, in particular, bought into the toxic myth, which we discussed in part 1 of bystander. That is in which you are playing a role that's passive in your own life. And it manifested itself by him and his shipmates stopping by an island on the way home of the sun god, Helios. Helios had a bunch of cattle there. And Odysseus had been warned that under no circumstances do you want to tick off the sun. Don't touch his cattle, no matter how hungry you are. Well, Odysseus casually told his men this, and stay away from the cattle, and then immediately went to sleep. What did they do? They ate the cattle. You do not tick off the sun. The next morning, Odysseus and his men got on their ship. With a thunderclap, the ship broke in 2 and sank to the ground. Every single one of his men died. Odysseus only survived by grabbing onto a piece of wood. And he, because of the bystander role that he was playing in his own life, ended up wafting powerlessly away into a cave guarded by a goddess named Calypso. And yes, the music is named after her. Calypso kept Odysseus as basically her love slave in this cave for 7 years. And during that time, having all of this wonderful affair with this goddess and being alone, he forgot his old life. He forgot it. This is what he wanted. But gradually, the truth about who and what he was began to gurgle to the surface again. He began to remember he had a son back in Ithaca that had grown to be a man while he was gone. He had a wife who had never known what happened to him. He had a kingdom that for all he knew was falling apart without leadership, which, by the way, he had learned a big lesson about with that whole incident with the sun god. And so and it's a powerful scene. One day he realized it was time for him to be back home. It was time for him to reclaim his mission and go on his journey to find his roadmap back to Ithaca. And he kneeled down in the darkness of this cave. And he bowed his head and he prayed with all of his might to be set free. And with that charisma that was behind his prayer, with the heart, with the voice, with his intention, the gods heard. Suddenly, in a flash of light, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, appeared at the mouth of that cave and told Calypso, it's time to set Odysseus free. Odysseus went back home and he saw that his palace had been trashed. His wife had been approached by 100 suitors, assuming that he was dead. So Odysseus dressed up as part of his own roadmap building, his plan, as a beggar, and asked what was going on. And he got to his wife, who said to this old beggar, oh, my husband's dead. He's not coming back. So I have his bow and arrow. And the first of these 100 suitors that can take it and shoot it through 12 handles of axes without any mistakes, they get to marry me. Odysseus was devastated. But he showed up the next morning still dressed up as a beggar for the contest that she had arranged. Now, as you can imagine, shooting an arrow through 12 axe handles is a next to impossible feat, and none of the suitors were able to do it. And finally, as a joke, they turned to Odysseus, who said, I'll do it. He grabbed that bow and arrow while everyone laughed. And then suddenly there was silence in the room. He held his breath. He might have quivered a little bit because he hadn't held a bow and an arrow for years since he'd been a captive of Calypso. He drew back the string. He let that arrow fly. And it went through all 12 axe handles. A thundercloud filled the sky and a lightning bolt came to the ground. And then Odysseus threw off this disguise of being a beggar. He jumped up on a ridge. He turned around with his arrow. And he said, now it is time for me to take aim at something else. And he lifted that arrow up, and within a minute, 100 suitors lay dead on the ground. I am Odysseus, he said. I am the man who conquered Troy. I am the man who navigated the seas. I am the man who escaped the captivity of a goddess. Ithaca is mine. He had reached apotheosis. He became an immortal. And how do we know that to this day? Because here we are, thousands of years later, talking about it. He claimed who and what he was, but he didn't just say it out loud. It's important to understand that moment when he drew it back, having not touched a bow and arrow for 7 years, was afraid. And when he shot the arrow, he was proclaiming that he had had apotheosis to himself. Declare your professional freedom. Be like Odysseus. Declare it to the whole world. Most importantly, declare it to yourself.
So good. So good. I'm taking a moment to take it all in here. Over the last 4 weeks, we have talked about toxic myths holding us back, building a vision for the future, igniting our charisma, and now we are building our own Mount Olympus, a roadmap to it. And we're climbing up and we're declaring our professional freedom.
Yes.
So good. So good. Amanda's going to miss you. But as I shared in the beginning, you guys, I want to let you know that in just a few weeks, let me get the exact date for you here. On the 14th of June, Scott Mason will be on My Way, 5:05 p.m. Central Time, only on the Breakthrough Show Network. It's so good to have you here this last month. And thank you for igniting flame in me, in everybody that has been a part of the show, in the audience. Thank you for what you provided for us this month.
Thank you.
Love it. I love it. Anne Marie said, awesome. Just answered many of my soul questions.
It's beautiful. That's what it's all about.
So good. So good. Oh, that's her birthday weekend too.
I love happy birthday in advance, and we'll say happy birthday again. Make sure I get a reminder about. Follow me on LinkedIn if you haven't, and then let me know it's your birthday. Come on.
Yes, absolutely. We want to remind everybody, Scott Mason, where to find you. We've got your LinkedIn down below. You can always go to purposehighway.com as well, correct?
Absolutely. And if anyone reaches out to me and tells me that you have been or that you found out about me through this show, I am more than happy to, only for people who found out about me through this show, to offer a free 30-minute charisma consultation. There's no obligation. It's not a sales sort of thing. It's just a way of saying thank you for being a part of this journey with me and Jessica. I will talk to you about ways you can elevate your own charisma. And I promise it will be something of value and will make you glad that you are here.
You may even sing a chorus or two of Donna Summer.
I might, although not with her charisma.
I love it. I love it. Listen, seriously, you guys, make sure you connect with Scott. He is one of the most genuine people that I know. And my life has been made better because he's in it. And I just, I'm so grateful.
And I very much feel the same about you. And I'm so glad to have had the chance to meet the folks on this live stream show too, because it's a special group. This
is a special group. I mean, they get up early. Most of them, it's real early. And, shout Anne Marie's over, out west. And so it's real early for her out there, and she gets up and comes and participates. I'm so grateful for everybody that comes, and it's early to be processing these kind of conversations, but here you are and you're doing it well.
Coffee, the drink of the gods.
Do they have that on top of Mount Olympus? Do they have?
I would have been the god of coffee.
Maybe a Starbucks or a Dunkin' on the
way. Exactly.
I love it. Yes, Anne Marie said it's 5 a.m. there.
5 a.m. Thank you so much. That's special.
I love it. I love it. Well, do you have anything you're celebrating today, Scott, or any birthdays you know of? Anything you would like to celebrate in our celebrations?
I don't even know my own birthday. Maybe because I was just born a few years ago. No, I leave it up to you to whip those names out of the hat.
I will do that. I will do that. And it's funny you brought up CP30 today, because I don't know if you know this, but today is Frank Oz's birthday, and he was the puppeteer for Yoda.
Wow. And Labyrinth, wasn't he involved in that?
I believe so.
Maybe the Dark Crystal. Maybe the Dark Crystal more than the Labyrinth.
It's so funny. I had never heard of I love the Labyrinth, but I had never heard of the Dark Crystal. And then my husband was like, what? You have not seen that? And then it became this whole thing. So
again, a story with mythical components and multiple layers to it.
Yes, absolutely. Who else has a birthday today? Mike Myers, actor Mike Myers, has a birthday today. Let's see. Ian McKellen has a birthday. He's Gandalf.
I love it when powerful. He's like, how dare you challenge me, Hobbit? Right, and then he fills the whole room with light or whatever.
Is there a stage performance of that?
Let's do it.
If there isn't, you need to play that role, Scott Mason.
Just give me a nice gray wig.
Yes.
I want you to be in a Donna Summer musical, please. Find a role.
Listen, if the cards are stacked the way I hope they are at the moment, and things move very quickly. Like I feel like they're about to. There will definitely, Jessica will be back on the stage again. I promise you that.
With wigs?
Promise you that. There could be. Well, I don't know if we can fit all of this hair under a wig, but we will try. Who else has a birthday today? Auburn alumni and incredible actress. And I say Auburn because it's right here with us here in Alabama. Octavia Spencer's birthday is today as well. Love her. Comedian. I don't think we've seen him in a minute. Jamie Kennedy. You remember Jamie Kennedy?
He was in Scream.
Yeah. Been a minute since we've really heard much about him, but it is a birthday today. Also, actress Anne Heche birthday today as well. And from back in my school days, Roseanne Holden's birthday is today. Happy birthday, Roseanne. It was good to see your face pop up in the birthdays this morning. And that is all the birthdays we have today. So we must do our song now. Drum roll. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mike Myers, Ian McKellen, Octavia Spencer, Frank Oz, Jamie Kennedy, Anne Heche, and Roseanne Holden. Happy birthday to you.
Yes. You have a beautiful voice.
Thank you. I'll send you a special song later, Scott.
Please do. And next time, just tell me to shut up because I know mine ain't as good as yours. Be the goddess of silence. Others. Silencing others.
Listen. I love it when other people sing with me, and you are one of the brave souls that has done it. It's fun to me. I say sing your song. How does the song go?
Make it simple to laughter.
Sing a song. Sing it loud. Sing it strong. Sing of good things, not bad. Sing of happy, not sad. Sing a song. Make it simple to last the whole life long. Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing a song. Yes.
I can't believe I remembered even 3/4 of it.
That just made my whole day.
Karen Carpenter, rest in peace.
Yes.
I love it.
La 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 la.
How embarrassing.
Amanda said her heart is so full, though. See, that's why it's so good.
I just don't want us singing Captain and Tennille because we're already starting to walk down a very dark road here.
Should we do? I think this is what we should do, Scott. When I get up in that area, we need to go to karaoke. Yeah. I see Islands in the Stream.
Oh, I love that.
It's happening, boys and girls. I love it. Scott, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being you and for being here. Don't forget to connect with Scott in the link in the comments. We've talked about Instagram, the LinkedIn, purposehighway.com. And we appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you again, Scott. We will see you next time, you guys. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and make joy a priority in your life today and every day. See you tomorrow. Bye.
You've been tuned in to Project Joy Live with Jessica Dugas, your weekday morning talk show, inviting you to start your day with a triple shot of good vibes only on the Breakthrough Show Network. Binge all past episodes of Project Joy at projectjoypodcast.com. Until next time, help us spread the joy by sharing this episode, and we'll see you soon.